Hi everyone, it's really nice to be back for the second Q&A for our upcoming Recovery and Beyond conference in September the 10th and 11th. And these sessions are for really anybody who's interested in the conference, anybody who's interested in the conversation. We really want to connect with people and talk about why we're doing this conference and why we want to spread the message that we've got. So this evening there is myself, Jacqueline Hollows, Christian McNeil, Barbara Smith and Jason, and we might not all speak, but we are all here with you. And we wanted to kick off with, why have we called this conference? Why have we had the subtitle Recovery is Simpler Than You Think? So, Jason, do you want to speak a little bit to that?
Yeah. I've been writing in my book about this recently, and it's very much my own personal journey as well that I went on, really sort of, and sort of, I was trying to look back at the history, I read quite a few books about the sort of development of mental health and stuff over the years and things, and kind of looking at where the 12 steps started and all the stuff, that people typically come into contact first with addiction. It's like, it's such an innocent, you can see it's such an innocent development of misunderstanding, how it originated and how money got involved, and like how people become conditioned to believe that it is this huge, complicated problem that's, it's often called an unexplainable phenomena. It's kind of like no one can say what it is or how it manifests or where it comes from. Is it genetic? Is it neuroscientific? Is it psychiatric? And all this stuff. And it's pretty obvious why people get overwhelmed by all the potential ideas, and now with the development of the internet and all these media channels and YouTube stuff and Facebook with all different opinions, and how mental health has gone over the years with the development of diagnoses and the medicating of certain things, and and again, all the talking therapies, in the psychological world, there's 600 talking therapies, I think, last time I checked, and there's a new idea and a new solution, to what's wrong with people, the pathologizing of normal human behavior. And like when we say it's simpler in this conversation, it's kind of like, what I found and what I found myself and what I found with clients is that, like, trying to suggest that it's much simpler, that it's not a complicated, unexplainable phenomena or a psychiatric diagnosis or some sort of ailment or, something that's wrong with you. It's kind of like, it's actually the system working exactly as it's meant to, like that if you innocently use your busy mind to create a story of yourself that's lacking in something, then you want to escape from it. It's just like the steam valve of a pressure cooker. It's like the system. What would happen if you didn't have a steam valve on a pressure cooker? It would explode. It's like the mind. What would happen if you didn't have an outlet? If you didn't do something, to stop yourself in that process? And well, it would probably be a psychotic episode or suicide. That's probably your next options, if you don't have an outlet. So trying to suggest that this is a really simple thing that's going on, when you start to get an understanding of how the mind works, when you start to get an understanding of how we innocently create a story of ourselves and live that story, like, and the feelings of lack, the feelings of worthlessness, the feelings of suffering, the thinking about the past, all the stuff that that I suffered with, and then tried to escape from. I saw the whole creation of the whole thing, the story that I'd created on a daily basis about myself, and then the fact that I'd escaped from it, and when I stopped creating the story, when I stopped making up the childhood trauma, the lack, the different, the loner, the overweight kid, all the stuff that, and what was wrong with me, all the stuff that had been lumped on top of that by the professionals that I'd been to see, all the diagnoses, all the list, all the medications, all the disorders that I had, and then the stuff that I adopted myself when I went to the 12 steps, the label of addict and all the other things. When I saw that all that stuff was just a story that was running through my mind on a daily basis. And when I see that with clients, when they see how they are creating this stuff that they're escaping from, there's no need. The desire to escape disappears. It just fades away. Because like when you're living life in a more content, joyful state, and you have more peace of mind, more of the things that you always wanted, there's nothing to escape from. There's nothing to you don't have those feelings of separation, of loneliness, of isolation anymore. You just stop creating them. And that was my own personal experience after many decades of doing this crazy stuff,
So realizing that the behavior is actually it's a solution. It's trying to help you get out of all of these horrible feelings, negative feelings, etc. So the simplicity part is the behavior is a solution. So hey, guess what? Why wouldn't you want to feel like that? And then what about the simplicity of the solution that we're talking about as well? Could you speak to that?
Yeah, sure. What happened, I speak to it from two perspectives. One, from what happened to me, what I saw, and then how I that has made a difference in my own practice, like with work with people. Like I always felt like I had more diagnoses, more problems. I'd done more things wrong. I'd done worse crime. I had the worst tragedy and the worst trauma, and I'd tried everything else. And at this point, I was already a psychotherapist of many years and had a practice and been working in mental health. But I really believe that I was like terminally damaged. It was unrecoverable, and because of everything that had happened. And when someone introduced this idea to me, which we've just talked about, like about how we create the story of ourselves, it's kind of like, and I just got a little glimpse of that, and it was like, the difference was that there was just nothing to do. There was just a seeing, an insight into the creative nature of thought, how the story runs through my own mind, how I innocently use my own thinking to create this idea of myself, and then how the body holds the score of my thinking, and I'm constantly feeling on behalf of what I'm creating in my mind. Now, this small insight into how that works started me to question my whole experience. And by question, I mean like, this is not a long, complicated, drawn-out list of anything. It's literally just all going through my mind like this, like, oh, what about this? What about this? What about this? And it's like, all started to fall apart internally. Like, so it was just this small glimpse of kind of seeing. And I often, flipping this on the other side, when I work with clients, I often say, well, does a fish know it's swimming in water? It's kind of like, or if you see a rope and you imagine it's a snake and you feel the feeling of fear about a snake, and then you see it's a rope, do you still need to do anything about the snake? It's kind of like, you just kind of see, and that's the simplicity of it. And that's what I'm pointing my clients to. It's kind of like when they come with all these ideas, oh, I've got this wrong with me, I got that wrong with me. I'm like, I don't buy that, because nobody bought that with me. People really saw through my own complicated thinking that I carried with me, and they were just constantly pointing me back to this place within me that was perfect, undamaged, unbroken, unbreakable, that was always there and always okay. And as I started to experience that sense of well-being, that place within me that was okay, those little moments at first of quiet, of peace, of being okay, and just you know, it didn't make any sense to look any other way. Just and that just evolved, you know. I call it the domino effect. It's like the dominoes falling. Once you start to see it, you can't, you know, you just start seeing it in every area, and it's just been a constant unfolding from there, you know. And that's the same journey, I guess, that I take people on, that I work with, you know. And it's like I had a client this morning, and I'll describe it, and he said to me, my shoulders have dropped. That's what he said, you know, because he was like this, you know, all the time, tense and stuff. And after just 2 sessions, you know, I only had 2 sessions with him, and he said, my shoulders have dropped. And I said, you know, you can feel someone's energy. He just felt so much lighter, you know. It's like we all innocently carry the weight of the world around, you know. It's kind of like as if it's an external thing, but like the weight of the world is in here, you know, like the weight of all the external things, that like they live inside, not outside. We're having an inside out experience, not an outside in experience. So we're carrying around this imaginary world, you know, like overwhelmed with problems and ourselves, and what about me, and how am I fixing this? But really, when we just see that this is happening in here, it's not the world, it's not the outside world, that from there it's like such a simple seeing of what's true, and all problems dissolve. Not all problems, we still live the human experience, but so much stuff dissolves, you know, and becomes unproblematic, and it just get lighter from that place, you know.
Lovely. So rather than trying harder and working harder and getting frustrated by our inability to change or inability to grasp something, what I hear you saying is that a shift in understanding creates the potential to realize where else are we looking at things in a certain way, and where else can we have that shift. But actually, you're also saying that once the shift happens, a lot of other stuff falls away anyway. So you don't have to go, oh, I'm fixing that bit now, and I'm fixing that bit now, and so on. So the whole idea of cross addictions, for instance, goes out the window, really, because you see more about what's happening internally.
Yeah, the cross addiction stuff's great, because like in my practice before, and in my own personal experience, I literally just went from one thing to another. I put down drugs, I picked up food. I put down food, I picked up the gym. I put down the gym, I picked up toxic relationships. You know, it was literally then overeating. I was constantly overeating as well. And everyone I knew, almost, or everyone I worked with, did the same thing innocently. They just thought, okay, I'm just going to not use drugs. But I've gained 7 stone, you know, it's kind of like in 2 months or something. It was just like that all the time. And the difference I see now is that there's nothing to pick up, because like when you start to see the futile nature of what we're creating in our mind, it's like there's no escape needed. It's not just getting rid of, not like whack-a-mole where you get rid of one, knock one down and another one pops up, because that's going to make sense, right? If you're using a behavioral process to quieten the noise that's going on in your mind. If you want to stop one because it's destructive, you're going to pick up another that doesn't seem as destructive or more socially acceptable. So in this process, we just kind of see from the very core, the very creation of the problem, what happens, and then you don't feel the need to escape from a joyful life, you know. You don't feel the need to escape from a calm and peaceful day, because it's good, you know.
Yeah. Thank you. Barbara, I saw you responding to a few things there. Did you want to pick something up?
Sure. Thank you, Jason. That's great. I guess for me, the simplicity is seeing that, again, there isn't this long laundry list of things you have to do to get sober or to stay sober. You know, in my practice over the years, you know, we thought it was that you were a work in progress and you had to do a lot of work, and the more work you did, the better off you were. And so, you know, it became sort of a full-time job for people. And what I love about the simplicity of this is what it's taking off our minds, what it's taking off our plates, to recognize that we already have this capacity to get sober, to wake up, to see more clearly. Freud used to put people on a couch for decades, sometimes waiting for them to have one transformational insight, but no one really asked, like, what is insight and where does it come from, you know? And to start to see, wow, I have this capacity built in. It's an app that I'm walking around with, and it's happening all day long. And there's nothing I have to do about that other than to settle down and listen and, you know, be curious about it. And that, for most people that I've met in recovery, is a whole new ballgame. And many who've been in recovery for a long time feel that it's dangerous, feel that, you know, again, they don't trust themselves, they don't trust a bigger picture. And that to me is very sad, because again, then you're sort of held hostage to the world that's telling you a lot of the stuff that Jason has just alluded to, which is, you know, you've got all this work to do to get to a point where you can survive and break this habit. So for me, I think that really is a simplicity. It's that we are not adding to your plate. You know, we're not adding to what you have to do to be okay, but it's what we're taking off to be able to have the clarity, to settle down enough to have the clarity to see, wow, this has been happening my whole life. Like, I just never noticed it before because my mind was so busy running around trying to make myself well. That inner peace is a default setting, and that we can drop into that at any time, to settle down and to see more clearly, and to listen to intuition and, you know, guidance and our inner knowings. That's for me a great beauty and a great gift to be able to share with people who I work with.
That's beautiful. And Jason touched on the inside outs, and I saw you nodding to that as well. But yeah, we'll I was going to ask you about that, but I wondered if Christian wanted to jump in as well.
No, let Barbara
Yeah.
say something about that, and then I'll come in after that, if that's okay.
Nice. Yeah.
Well, you know, again, in the world of traditional psychotherapy and addictions, we're always looking to the outside conditions of your life. And I've said to many people, I worked at a recovery center before I learned this. I've worked in many recovery centers, but I worked at one particular one where they had a 15-page history. So we were looking at everything from what was your mother doing when she was pregnant with you to, you know, what other stone do we have to turn over to find out the source of your unhappiness. So that, I would say, is the outside in misunderstanding on steroids. You know, we're looking everywhere for something that isn't there. Because, as Jason put so beautifully, you know, our pain and our suffering and the need for relief is coming from the internal machinations of our minds. And that's it. That's the only place it's coming from. And that's the beauty of dealing with a principle-based understanding, is that it only works one way. It never worked another way. It's never going to work another way. There really isn't a discussion. We really don't need triple-blind studies. You know, be curious about seeing that this has always been where your pain is coming from. And once you see that is it, that it's coming from you and not at you, that it isn't being generated by the things around you, as true as that feels for most people. And God, it does feel true. And I get stymied with that pretty much every day for short periods of time, but I'm onto it now, you know, so I think, yeah, no, you know, I know it feels that way, but it's not true. So now I can turn the camera this way and see what's really going on. And that's where I have more and more insights, and where more and more is revealed to me. That is the basis of a solid and strong recovery.
Beautiful. And what I was hearing just then is, and the linking that with what you were saying before, and the beauty of it is that because it's principle, because it's true all of the time, you don't have to be convinced of it, because you can just try it out for yourself. You can just see where it works, and when you do that experimentation and you look, you actually do get to see, oh yeah, I don't always feel angry in traffic, although sometimes it looks like it. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
Christian.
Oh, thanks, Jacqueline. One thing that occurred to me listening to you sharing is the reflection of my own experience, that certainly stumbling across the principles as someone who had been in recovery, sober for a long time, it certainly simplified my life and improved it. But I am also conscious of describing it as simple, which is how I see it. But it can have an implication that this isn't a real problem, or it's easy you just do that and it's gone. And it, I think it's important not to be blasé about it, because there's plenty of people drinking and drugging themselves to death without ever having absorbed the traditional therapeutic understanding of addiction. And so it's simple, but it's perhaps the elusive obvious, as one of our colleagues sometimes describes this understanding, and one of the reasons I think we're doing this conference is to point people to that elusive obvious and that simplicity. And it just came to me listening to the you guys speaking today that from early on in my life, I adopted what I now see as a false belief that the answer to happiness, finding contentment in my life, was about sort of looking to stuff, looking to money or qualification, success, drink, relationships, all sorts of things that and there's nothing wrong with those things. There's not even anything wrong with drink for many people, but it was a fundamental misunderstanding, because I had no sense of a true self within, a wholeness within, an unbreakable essence. I had no sense of that. And so I was trying to find that on the sort of fool's errand, looking outside myself. And that's what, what led me, into the path of alcoholism and various other compulsive behaviors that I had. But I would also say that once those habits had started, they had very little on a day-to-day basis to do with my state of mind in that moment, because it wasn't the state of mind so much as a belief that this is just what I do, this is my thing, and then there came a stage when I was trying to fight it. So more, my mind was engaged with an internal battle, and that was actually probably the worst period of my drinking, was when I had that, was trying to kind of gain control through willpower. And like many people, although I didn't fully get the significance of it, like most people I know who are sober today, I finally got sober on a moment of insight, when I really threw in the towel. And I didn't have that language then, but that I gave up on ego and gave up on that false idea of who I was and what the solutions were, and just accepted that I didn't know, and I felt like I couldn't go on, and somehow that was the thing that enabled me to stop drinking. And the further insight much later down the road, when was around this, was when I stumbled across the principles, and I really did just stumble across them, and it was the realization that I wasn't broken, and what I had thought was humility in accepting that I had a condition, a mental illness, an addictive personality, or whatever. What I had believed that to be humility, and suddenly I saw that it wasn't true. It was all I had was a false belief that a solution or for in my life lay in drink, and it was wrong. It didn't. And I'd really tested it to destruction, to the point that I could no longer, and to my mind, you know, it seems self-evident that I never will be able to drink in safety again. You know, that's anyway, that's another story. But in letting that go, I was able to just open more deeply to the fact that that true self, that essence, is and always was already there. I just wasn't aware of it, you know, for me and for everybody, and that nobody is broken. But it does seem to me, if anyone is listening to this who's coming, you know, is coming to this and wondering what it's all about, maybe is drinking or drugging and struggling with it at the present time, that is one place to start. You know, just that opening to the possibility that whatever's going on within, you know, the level of the turmoil on the surface, that there's something deeper, something whole and complete within. And the more you look to that, and the more you entertain that possibility and entertain that potential, that it's astonishing what answers can come and what might begin to unfold, because that's been my experience. And it turns out that throughout my life I was always having insights, but once I discovered the principles, I got eyes for that, both historically and going forward, and the experience of insight became a more frequent one and a more reliable one, and it's been very helpful. And just to sort of finish it off, it's been, I think, 12 years now since I stumbled across the principles, and you know, without doubt, it's just been the happiest time of my life. But it not blissed out every day, you know, just up and down, but content, you know, deep and reliable contentment, for which I'm extremely grateful. And that's what I know you guys, and you know, I know I hear you share about that. I know lots of people in this world. It seems to be a common thing. Nobody's suggesting or aiming for, you know, blissed out every day, but there's just a level of grounded contentment that's priceless. Yeah.
I just wanted to quickly say, I think the distinction that Christian made between simple and easy is a really important one. That people listening to this may think that it's easy. And that's really not what we're saying, because I know a lot of people would react to that. So thank you for that, Christian. I hadn't heard that before, but I think that's a wonderful distinction.
Yeah, for sure. And
I don't think I invented it.
Well, we'll give you credit for it.
Yeah,
here, so we'll just say it's yours.
Don't be humble. Also, I think as well that the simple part is that just because something's simple doesn't mean we see it, and I think that's what we're all saying, is that it's not simple, therefore you don't know about that. It's simple in that actually it's not in the direction that we've all been looking in originally, and I love that everybody has pointed to it, insight and true self and those types of words. They're not things that we're taught to rely on, and actually when we turn and we realize that is the only thing we can rely on, those are the guides, that's when things start to simplify, or you start to sort of feel that things can be a little bit more of a clearer journey. But the getting to that sometimes can be difficult, because it's like, well, how because we're used to such a long history of the different methodologies and ways of treating addiction, plus societal ways of looking at the world, plus the way we're brought up, we're not taught to look that way round, inside out, even though it's something that's been guiding us since we were born. So yeah, there's that sort of, it's that tricky line to walk, isn't it? And the same as well, you know, I see for myself and for the people that I work with, that just because we're referring to it as simple because it's less complicated than we've been expected to believe, doesn't mean that it's going to be, you know, just that's it. Straightforward. It's a path, it's a journey, and as everyone else has pointed to, we all still go through those rocky times. But I loved what Barbara said. We know where to look now, and we know not to trust where we're at when we're going through that. When I used to feel it was felt so all-encompassing and so terrible, and like I wanted to end my life because it was all too much. And that's why I would drink or act out, you know, I had various sorts of compulsions. Now I realize that when I feel, I'm just feeling, that's all it is. I'm feeling, it's a feeling, it will pass. I won't be in it forever, whatever that feeling is, whether that's jealousy, upsetness, depression, all of the whole realm of it, happiness too, like you're not in that forever either, but the underlying contentment and the underlying gratitude for life is what remains and what bubbles up constantly. And knowing that makes my life a little bit easier, makes my life a little, well, way more contentful.
There's a video that I often use with clients, and I think it's called the backwards bike experiment, and it's about the difference between knowledge and understanding. You know, Sid Banks often used to say that, like, any parrot can kind of repeat the words, you know, but that just as, or even a small child can kind of repeat the words. But this video is about, they weld a little cog in place of where the handlebars are on the bike, right? So the bike works backwards. It's like when you turn to the right, it goes left, and when you turn to the left, it goes right. So and they used it to teach the difference between understanding and knowledge. And he took it around to all these schools and he explained how it works, and everyone went, yeah, I can do it. But all the videos, no one could do it. You know, everyone just got on it thinking they could ride this bike, but they couldn't. And he really just sort of highlights the and the other thing that he does is he does one for his son, who's a little boy, maybe he's 4 or 5 years old, and his son learns to ride the bike in 2 weeks, right? So it really shows the neurodiversity, neuroplasticity of a child, you know, how they can sort of learn something new much quicker. But as an adult, where we've been so ingrained in complexity, you know, it's kind of like that. Something that's even explained to us really simple. Look, you sit on it, one way goes one way goes the other. It's riding a bike, you know, it's kind of like, but we've learned to ride a bike for so many years. It's kind of like, we just can't, the mind just can't see this simple solution. So it took him 9 months to learn to ride this bike backwards. And I often use this with clients to say, you know, what we're teaching here is an understanding. It's not knowledge, you know, and that's like where I think the simplicity part of it is kind of, you know, is highlighted in a way that if it was just the knowledge, it's kind of like, you know, it would be just, here you go, here's the answer, you're done. You know, it's kind of like, but everyone, you know, like, you may notice when you get clients, you kind of, maybe you introduce this idea for the first time and they go, yeah, so how do I do that? Or like, how does that change my life? Well, yeah, I understand that, but my life's still the same. Nothing's changed. It's kind of like, so they've got the information at that point, but they've got no understanding. You know, and as this stuff is shared in a loving and non-confrontational way, in a different way, people become more relaxed and allow the complicated mind to relax and quieten down and get to hear something that's a little bit different, you know, that makes them go, oh, hold on a minute, you know, how does that work? You know, and as soon as somebody gets curious, you know, they get beyond the their thinking, it's like then they start to get a little taste of the understanding, you know. And I've noticed that that's when the domino effect starts, you know. They start to question things and they start to wonder about things, you know. And that's another thing that comes to mind for me, that I love that video. I can share it with people because it really just say that I'm not just repeating some words here and hoping that you get a life-changing experience, you know. Really kind of pointing to something deep and profound that the mind has been conditioned to look away from, you know. It's kind of like to recoil from, you know. It's like innocently as it works, but it is simple. Like, I like that, simple but not easy, you know. It's kind of like, but the reason it's not easy is because we've just learned, you know, to do it, look at things a different way, you know.
Yeah, I like that. Put the link, and we can link it in the recording as well.
Oh, yeah,
if we can. Lovely. So is there anything else anybody wants to share right now? All right, so thank you for watching this video. If you've got something from it, we'd love to hear from you, either in the comments or through the website, or I've put all the links to all of our websites on the in the description, so you can contact any of us. If you want to come along to the conference, we'd love to have you. It's the 10th and the 11th of September near Glasgow, and it's going to be a beautiful event, and it's really, really accessible to everybody.
In Glasgow, Jacqueline.
In Glasgow. Okay, in Glasgow. I don't want to pronounce the name. What's the name of it? Scottstown?
Scotstoun. Heart of Scotstoun Community Centre in Scotstoun.
That's why I was and we'll also put the link to that in the description. And yeah, we'd love to hear from you. So that's us for now. Bye, everybody.